Hello, welcome. I am predicting that Vice President Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash in St. Louis into Busch Stadium on August 7th, 2024. She will be replaced by Michelle Obama. I am predicting that former President Jimmy Carter will die on August 1st, and that his prophetic funeral, in which Trump will sit next to Obama, will be on August 5th. I am predicting that James Earl Jones, the voice of the Lion King and the voice of Darth Vader, will die on August 5th, which is the same day on which it is predicted that Carter's funeral will be on. I am predicting that singer-songwriter Paul Simon will die on August 11th. I am predicting that on August 13th, a solar flare will erupt on the surface of the sun that will then send a coronal mass ejection that will hit Earth on August 15th, 2024, which will knock out America's power grid and will lead to food shortages. This will also trigger the eruption of Yellowstone volcano, also on August 15th. August 15th will be the date of the resurrection rapture, the first of two raptures. The second rapture will be on September 5th. I am predicting that on August 16th, 2024, the key will open the bottomless pit and fallen angels will cross over into the earthly realm. August 16th will be a symbolic beginning to the fifth trumpet judgment that is described in Revelation chapter 9, when the demonic realm collides with the earthly realm. August 16th will be a symbolic beginning to demons pretending to be aliens, and it is probable that on August 16th, Pope Francis will announce that aliens have arrived and have made him the ambassador for the world. This will immediately give Pope Francis, the Antichrist, supreme power over governments of the world. At some point, there will be a massive Mary apparition that will deceive the masses, because all Mary apparitions in history have been demons pretending to be Mary. August 16th will be a symbolic beginning to a zombie pandemic and the masses becoming demonically possessed that will be facilitated through the thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist, and 5G frequencies. August 16th will be a symbolic beginning to the coming genocide politicide in America. I am predicting that on August 2nd, Joe Biden will step down and make Michelle Obama the 47th president. It is predicted that on August 13th, Joe Biden will step down and Michelle Obama will become the 47th president. It is predicted that Michelle Obama will make Barack Obama her vice president on August 18th, 2024, and then it is predicted that she will step down and make Barack Obama the 48th president on August 25th. It is predicted that on August 6th, the historic barge that has been stuck on the rocks of the Niagara River for over 100 years will finally break free and crash over Niagara Falls. The reason for this is that Niagara Falls is Noah's flood symbolism, and the barge was involved in the most dramatic rescue in the history of Niagara Falls, symbolic of Noah's Ark. Niagara in the native language means straight, narrow way, and Niagara's Horseshoe Falls is perfectly aimed at the CN Tower in downtown Toronto, because Toronto and its tower are symbolic of the Tower of Babel. In a game of horseshoes, the object is to aim the horseshoe and throw it at the metal stick, which is why the Horseshoe Falls is perfectly aimed at the metal stick that is the CN Tower. God is communicating that as testament for those who will live in the 1,000 years of Christ's reign on earth, the geography of North America will, as a result of a massive earthquake, be divided by a body of water from the Great Lakes to the Mississippi Delta. This destruction will be judgment on America and Canada for attempting to divide God's land, Israel. When this happens, the water in the Great Lakes will spill out over southern Ontario and Toronto. And this is going to happen sometime before October 12th, 2024. I am predicting that dirty bombs will explode in Manhattan, New York City, and there will be a large-scale evacuation on August 25th. I am predicting that Israel will bomb Iran on August 26th. I am predicting that on August 29th, President Trump will die from a heart attack. I am predicting that on October 9th, there will be a catastrophic asteroid hit on Earth. The day of the Lord, the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ, will be on December 26th, 2024. The date that this video is posted proves that these predictions are being made ahead of time, as do these time-stamped emails and forensic notes PDF documents. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. All right, this amazing and extremely profound video must be watched. Whatever you do, do not skip this video. But this video was produced prior to July 23rd. The information that I'm about to explain explains how the signs on July 11th revealed adding the number of days to get to July 23rd. And then the amazing signs on July 23rd in turn revealed adding another 9 days to get the date that Jimmy Carter is predicted to die on August 1st. The signs that occurred on July 23rd are explained in the must-watch Unforgiven video, the Clint Eastwood Unforgiven prophecy video on this channel. Watch that video also. And in case you haven't heard me say this before, this is how it works. It is a trail of signs that lead to certain dates that end up either being the date or another step in the trail of signs that is leading to the predicted date of the event, in this case, the death of Jimmy Carter. The reason why the Lord does this is that he, through this, can tell stories and reveal extremely important knowledge and information, which is precisely the case with this particular video here. The information that needs to be learned in this video is essential for understanding what is about to come. All right, the subject of this information in this video, in this email, is very important and very serious. Prior to July 11th, 2024, we were expecting this. We were expecting, well, as I wrote, prior to July 11th, 2024, it was expected that either Jimmy Carter would die or there would be a relevant, or plural, relevant prophetic signs related to this. On July 11th, 2024, at the NATO summit, Joe Biden made a gaffe and referred to Zelensky as Putin. Both have the first names of Vladimir. Zelensky, who was 44 years old when Russia first invaded his nation of 44 million people, is used by God in his signs to identify the Antichrist, the 44th president. God uses firsts for his signs, and Zelensky is the first Jewish leader of Ukraine. Okay, this is very important to what we will be talking about here in this email thread and video. Biden made another gaffe at the summit on the same day when he referred to his vice president as Vice President Trump. Trump is the 45th president. These gaffes trumpeted that the 44th president will become the president again 45 days later on August 25th, 2024, after Obama, the 44th president, replaces Vice President Kamala Harris. So this is why Biden made a gaffe regarding Trump being his vice president, because he was hinting at how the Antichrist would become the president again after the death of his Vice President Kamala Harris, And this will be 45 days later, and Trump was the 45th president. These gaffes were made at the 75th anniversary NATO summit. On this same day, actress Shelley Duvall died at the age of 75. This is because Jimmy Carter will die 7 + 5 days after these gaffes on July 11th. As explained in the Carter funeral video, in God's signs, Carter is symbolic of Methuselah in the Bible. The name Methuselah means when he dies, destruction. Okay, because Methuselah in the Bible died at the timing of the beginning of the flood judgment. The name Methuselah means when he dies, destruction. And Carter is symbolic of Methuselah in God's signs, as explained in the absolute must-watch Carter funeral video. The flood destruction in the Bible began in Genesis 7:11, which is why we had these signs on July 11th, 7/11, that, as I'm explaining, relate to Jimmy Carter. In God's signs, Carter's inauguration in 77, as in 1977, began a series of 7 presidents that symbolize the 7 kings and 8th king in the book of Revelation, in prophecy. The 7th king in this parallel is Trump, and the 8th king is Obama, the Antichrist. Shelley Duvall, as explained in the other video. Shelley Duvall is most remembered for her portrayal of Wendy in the movie The Shining. The movie is based on Stephen King's book of the same name. I should say Stephen King's book of the same name. The book was written in 77. King's book, written in 77, as in 1977, hints at the series of 7 kings that began with Carter in 77. Here we have the Carter sign on July 11th that was expected in advance to occur on July 11th. One of the most referenced things in cinema is room 237 from the movie The Shining. Jimmy Carter will die on the date 7/23. Outside the US, the date 7/23 is written as 23/7. Room 237 hints at this. 7/23 will be 7 + 5 days after Shelley Duvall died at the age of 75 on the day of the 75th anniversary NATO summit. What I also didn't realize at first, and am now realizing, is that room 237 also hints at 2 + 3 = 5 + 7 = 12. And so the death of Shelley Duvall at the age of 75 on the 75th anniversary summit of NATO gives us a 7/5. And Shelley Duvall is most remembered for her role in The Shining, and one of the most cited, referenced things in cinema history is from The Shining, room 237, which hints at 2 + 3 = 5 and a 7. And it gives us 75, or it hints at the 7 + 5 days from the death of Shelley Duvall, who starred in The Shining, to the date it is predicted that Jimmy Carter will die, which will be on the date 7/23, which hints at 23/7, room 237. The shots of the exterior of the hotel in the movie The Shining are of Timberline Lodge Hotel in Oregon. The original room number for the movie was 217, but the hotel requested it be changed out of concern that no visitor would want to stay in room 217. 217 hints at the date 217, which is the date the flood destruction began in Genesis 7:11. Which is why Shelley Duvall, who starred in the movie in which the opening scene or the exterior scenes are of the Timberline Lodge Hotel, so this is why Shelley Duvall died on the date 7/11. Because again, the Timberline Hotel gives us the number 217, which is Noah's flood symbolism, and as is the date 7/11, as was just explained. The movie is known for the Shining movie, is known for the hell that director Stanley Kubrick put his actors through during the 13 months of filming. And by the way, in the Bible, the number 13 is symbolic of the Antichrist. Which, by the way, is why Barack Obama, when he was a senator in the state senate in Illinois, represented the 13th district of Illinois. It is known that it took 127 film takes to capture the famous scene when Duvall's character swings a baseball bat at Jack Nicholson's character while walking backwards up a staircase. Okay, so this iconic scene in the movie. And it's known that this scene took 127 film takes because this movie is also known for the hell that Stanley Kubrick put his actors through during the 13 months of filming. This 127 film takes completely exhausted Shelley Duvall. 127 takes hints at room 217 and the date 217. 127 film takes on a staircase also hints at the exhausted people and firefighters in the staircases on 9/11 when buildings 1, 2, and 7 collapsed, which is why the number 127 hints at 9/11. On the day of the 75th NATO summit, Shelley Duvall died at the age of 75, and this date, 7/11, July 11th, was exactly 22 years and 1 month after 9/11 in 2001. 22 years and 1 month hints at 221, the 75th semi-prime number. On April 18th, 2024, a fire broke out at the Timberline Lodge Hotel, which was the hotel that was used to film the exterior scenes of the hotel in the movie The Shining. On April 18th, this hotel required multiple fire agencies to respond to a fire that broke out. It was a major fire. It's part of the story of this hotel, for example, on the Wikipedia page regarding this hotel. Multiple fire agencies. This was exactly 12 weeks before Shelley Duvall died, and her death is 12 days before the predicted death of Jimmy Carter. Put another way, the Timberline Lodge fire was exactly 7 plus 5 weeks before Duvall died at 75 on the day of the 75th NATO summit, 7 plus 5 days before it is predicted that Jimmy Carter will die. Biden's gaffes at the summit pointed to Obama. The name Obama is equal to 84 in Hebrew gematria, and Obama was born on the date 8/4. And incidentally, 8 plus 4 equals 12. This 12 weeks connection from the Timberline Lodge fire to July 11th, 2024 is also 84 days. And on this day, Biden pointed to Obama through his gaffes. The date 8/4 is the 216th day of the calendar year, and 216 is equal to 6 times 6 times 6, which in Bible prophecy is the number that symbolizes the Antichrist. 12 weeks is also 2016 hours, which hints at 6 times 6 times 6. 84 days is also 2 months and 23 days. 223 is the 48th prime number, which hints at Obama becoming the 48th president. 84 days is also 23% of a calendar year, and Obama is the basketball president who wore jersey number 23 in high school. July 11th, 2024 is in turn 12 days to Carter's predicted death, and this is equal to 2 times 2 times 3 days, which hints at 223, the 48th prime number, which hints at the 48th president, the future predicted 48th president, because Michelle Obama will become the 47th president. And that's also a prediction too, because of course this video is being posted before it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. Prior to July 1st, 2024, we expected either the death of Jimmy Carter or a related prophetic sign. As was explained in other videos, the signs on July 1st, 2024 pointed to the movies Chinatown, Rosemary's Baby, and How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Chinatown starred Jack Nicholson. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days revealed adding 10 days to July 1st to reach July 11th, 2024, which was a main reason why this date was looked at in the first place, which is what this video is about. And on July 11th, this is the date on which Nicholson's co-star in The Shining, Shelley Duvall, died. Chinatown and Rosemary's Baby communicated the birth of the Antichrist, as explained in the other videos. And so anyway, the point is here is that with this 10 days interval, we have these two dates with signs on them that point or used Jack Nicholson. So that's in other words, confirmation of the signs we are talking about here for July 11th. Because this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter, as the Bible says is required. And this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination, and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. And so this Jack Nicholson to Jack Nicholson movies signs are a second witness to what we are talking about, which is the fact that God pointed to July 1st and then July 11th through the signs on July 1st. It was Stanley, okay, and we were talking about now in the last sentence here about how the signs on July 1st involved the movie Chinatown, which, as explained in the other videos, relates to Rosemary's Baby, and both of these movies are symbolically communicating the birth of the Antichrist. Well, in fact, the plot of the movie Rosemary's Baby is, in fact, specifically about the birth of the Antichrist, okay? That's why this is relevant. It was Stanley Ann Dunham who birthed the Antichrist, Barack Obama. It was Stanley Kubrick who directed The Shining. Stephen King received his inspiration for The Shining after he stayed in the Stanley Hotel in Colorado. So the genesis of the movie and book, The Shining, is King's stay in the Stanley Hotel. And we are talking about the Antichrist King here. Okay. And the Antichrist King was birthed by Stanley Ann Dunham. It's quite an unusual name for a woman, which is more confirmation that God is emphasizing this for this very reason that I am explaining right here. In other words, the prophetic reason why her name is Stanley is precisely for what I am explaining in this video. And believe me, I say that very humbly. It is a humbling experience to know all of this information, which is why I work so very, 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 very hard to get it all out, because I know it isn't meant for me. Well, so this is from Wikipedia. King and his wife were served dinner in an empty dining room accompanied by canned orchestral music. Quote, this is King speaking, except for our table, all the chairs were on the tables. Okay, so King actually arrived at the Stanley Hotel as everyone else was leaving because it was the last day of the season and the hotel was closing for the winter. And if you know the plot of The Shining, that's precisely what the plot is. So, and now King is describing his experience that led to him, it led to the inspiration for The Shining. Okay, so his quote is, except for our table, all the chairs were on the tables. So the music is echoing down the hall, and I mean, it was like God had put me there to hear that and see those things. And by the time I went to bed that night, I had the whole book, The Shining, in my mind, end quote. In other words, King is basically telling us, although he doesn't really know it fully, that God is, in fact, behind his inspiration for The Shining. This is a movie from God. And it's very, very serious what God is using this for, as I'm in the process of explaining. Okay, but we have a quote here from King, and he is saying that it was like God had put him there to hear, to experience everything that he experienced. But in fact, it was God that put him there at the Stanley Hotel. And why and how God had the Antichrist's mother's name be Stanley. Okay? The Stanley Hotel got its name from its founder, Freeland Oscar Stanley, after the local ranchers petitioned him not to name it after the 4th Earl of Dunraven, which was what it was going to be named after, but Stanley decided to listen to the local ranchers because they didn't like this guy, this Dunraven guy. Okay, so anyway, that's the origin of the name Stanley Hotel. It was named after the founder, Freeland Oscar Stanley, which hints at, okay, and the fact that it was going to be named after Dunraven, but instead was named Stanley, hints at Stanley Dunham, who birthed the Antichrist. The Stanley Hotel has 48 rooms, which hints at the future 48th president and Antichrist. The name of the young boy's character in the movie is Danny Torrance. His initials, DT, hint at Donald Trump, the 45th president. The actress who portrayed the mother of DT in the movie, the woman who birthed DT, Shelley Duvall, died 45 days before the Antichrist will become the 48th president. Young Danny Lloyd was chosen for the role of Danny Torrance after he spontaneously did his bit with his index finger, pretending that his finger is someone named Tony that is speaking to him. In the book, his character's name is Danny Anthony Torrance. The Shining is known for the scene in which Danny writes with lipstick on the door the word red rum, which Duvall's character is horrified to learn reads murder in a mirror. The name Fauci in Italian means sickle, as in the sickle in Revelation 14 that harvests the grapes that are thrown into the winepress of wrath, God's wrath. Anthony Fauci became the director of the NIAID on the same day that the movie The Killing Fields was released. This guy whose name begins with an N and ends with a Thony, Antony. This guy whose name begins with an N and ends with a Tony, and whose last name begins with an F and ends with a Ouchie, became the director of the NIAID on the same day that the movie The Killing Fields was released. That's the movie about the genocide in Cambodia. This guy whose name begins with the N and ends with a Tony, and whose last name begins with a F and ends with an Ouchie, is responsible for the murder of millions of people with what is the mark of the Antichrist. In the movie, Wendy is confronted with a flood of blood in the hallway of the hotel. Right? The iconic scene when the blood is cascading through the doors of the elevator into the hallway. In the movie, we learn that there have been murders in the hotel in the past. Okay, so this is all symbolism, and it's amazing because Danny's character in the movie, Danny Torrance, is speaking as if his index finger is talking, and it's eerie because it's as if there really is someone that's talking. And anyway, he calls this person who's talking through Danny's index finger Tony. And in the book, the character's name is Danny Anthony Torrance. Okay, and this movie is about murder, including the iconic scene where Danny writes the word red rum back, which is in the mirror reads murder. Okay, and we've got all of this blood, the hallway flooded with blood. Okay, and then we learn that the history of the hotel has had murders in it. Okay, and so what all of this is pointing to, of course, is the Antichrist and this guy whose name begins with an N and ends with a Tony, and also his surname begins with a F and ends with an Ouchie, who is responsible for the murder, literally, of millions of people through what is the mark of the Antichrist. And it is the mark of the Antichrist in its current form. It does not need an additional form of false religious worship or an additional technology to go with it, nor does it need a supposed new age of dispensation after supposedly all quote-unquote Christians will be raptured. In fact, one of the main reasons why most quote-unquote Christians have already taken the mark of the Antichrist is judgment for this specific doctrine of dispensationalism. And the commonly held objections that people have based on their understanding of Bible prophecy are answered in the end of the must-watch snake bite video on this channel. Obviously, when the prediction comes to pass in this video, the wise person will know that they need to watch every minute of every video on this channel, but especially the snake bite video, if you will. Many people's interpretation of the book and movie is that the hotel itself is a murderous spiritual entity that has spiritual power and influence over Nicholson's character. In other words, the plot of the movie is the hotel itself. Okay, I'll repeat that. The plot of the movie is the hotel. The movie is all about the hotel and what the hotel is doing to the characters, etc. Okay? And we've already even touched upon the prophetic Timberline Lodge Hotel and the Stanley Hotel to confirm what I just said. How God has used those in prophetic signs with the fire and the name of the Stanley Hotel and everything, right? That I've just explained so far. So what I'm getting at here is that it's all about the hotel, which is why Shelley Duvall died on this date, is because God is pointing to this hotel in the movie The Shining. Why is he doing this? Well, I'm in the process of explaining now. In Bible prophecy, the period of the Antichrist is symbolized by the number 42. And every occurrence of the number 42 in the Bible is in context of slaughter. Just for example, there were the 42 boys that were slaughtered by the she-bear. There was the 42 that were slaughtered at the pit by Jehu and his men. There was the 42 cities that people could take refuge in if they had committed manslaughter. And in the book of Revelation, the Antichrist is associated with the number 42, and he will be slaughtering people. So, all right, and now we're getting to this, okay? There are many hints in Kubrick's The Shining that communicate the slaughter of Native Americans. I think it's reasonable to conclude that Kubrick was communicating through the various things in the movie that the origin of the spirituality of the hotel, if you will, whatever you want to call it, the demonic possession of the hotel, is in the plot originated from the slaughter of the Native Americans. Okay, it's quite clear, actually, in my opinion. Okay, so. And this offers an explanation for why the hotel is haunted or demonic. In the opening scene of the movie, there are 42 cars in the parking lot of the hotel. In the movie, Danny is wearing a shirt with a big 42 on the shoulders of the sleeves. In the movie, there is a mention of $42 million. This is in the newscast that the caretaker is watching from his home in Miami when he gets the telepathy from Danny at the hotel in Colorado. Anyway, or I think, if I'm mistaken, it's a newscast on the TV in the hotel. But anyway, there's a mention of 42 million. It's quite clear in the movie. One of the most referenced things in cinema, Room 237, hints at 2 times 3 times 7 equals 42. So the most referenced thing about the movie, and one of the most referenced thing in cinema, is this number that gives us 42. So this is pure confirmation of 42 being hinted at in this movie, which is this prophetic number in Bible prophecy. It's mentioned 7 times as a 42-month period is mentioned 7 times in Bible prophecy as being symbolic of the period of the Antichrist. And we are already well inside the final 242 months, by the way. Okay. The name of the hotel in the movie is Overlook Hotel. In 42, as in 1942, the venue for the Nazis' Wannsee conference was held at a villa at Am Groben, Wannsee, 56 to 58. That is overlooking the Grober Wannsee. The Overlook Hotel and the number 42 is a prophetic sign that points to the venue of the Wannsee conference in 42 that overlooks a bight in the river near Berlin. It was at the Wannsee conference that the final solution for the Jews was formalized, which was a slaughter. And this is what the number 42 in the Bible symbolizes. And the slaughter of the Native Americans in the movie is a slaughter of a people, which is what the final solution was. The number 56 to 58 in the address of the venue hints at the prophecy regarding the 5th through 8th kings, which is what Jimmy Carter points to, as explained in the other videos, and is why the signs on July 11th, 2024, a date expected for Carter's death, pointed to the venue of the Wannsee Conference, with its address of 56 to 58, as in the 5th through 8th kings in the prophecy that Carter is symbolic of, or points to, in God's signs. Bible prophecy alludes to a coming genocide led by the Antichrist of the Jews and God's people. All right, so this is amazing beyond words. What can I tell you? God is pointing through the hotel to the venue of the Wannsee Conference, the final solution for the Jews, because this is all about the Antichrist. Oh, and one thing I wanted to add too regarding Jimmy Carter is that he is a type, if you will, or symbolic of the Antichrist who will persecute Jews, because the big thing about his presidency was the Camp David Accords, which pressured Israel to return land back to Egypt. The big transgression against God that the nations will do in the end, for which the nations will be judged and destroyed. The nations attempt to divide Israel and make Jerusalem an international city, led by the Antichrist, who is a president, which is why President Jimmy Carter is involved with all of these connections here. Because as explained in the other videos, Jimmy Carter is, in God's signs, a parallel with Barack Obama. The other videos explain that parallel, so I won't explain it again here. The Wannsee Conference was held on January 20th, 1942, exactly 67 years before Obama's inauguration on January 20th, 2009. 67 hints at 6 times 7 equals 42. This 67 years is also exactly 804 months. And Obama in Hebrew gematria is equal to 84, and he was born on the date 8/4. In other words, everything that I'm saying is correct. Barack Obama is the Antichrist that will persecute Jews and lead another Holocaust. Well, a similar type of thing. The Shining was filmed in the UK and was released in the UK 67 days before John Lennon, a musician from the UK, was shot. And again, 67 hints at 6 times 7 equals 42, and 42 in the Bible is symbolic of slaughter. SHOs are symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. The thing SHOs. In other words, the things that come out of guns and go into people are symbolic of the things that come out of things and go into people. You know what I'm talking about. It is the mark of the Antichrist in its current form. In the movie The Shining, Wendy reads a copy of The Catcher in the Rye, and after shooting John Lennon, the murderer sat down and read A Catcher in the Rye while waiting for the police. Okay, so the movie was released 67 days, released in the UK. It was filmed in the UK furthermore. Released 67 days, which is why it was first released in the UK. Was released 67 days before John Lennon, the UK musician, was shot. And the shooter read A Catcher in the Rye, and so did Shelley Duvall in the movie. To confirm his signs and connections, and there's a reason why, it's the symbolism in A Catcher in the Rye. To confirm his signs and connections, God pairs the numbers 9 and 23 together. Right? If we think about it, a simple way in which God would provide a second witness for us is through pairing certain numbers together, such as 9 and 23. And I know this because I've been studying his big picture of signs from morning until night and for more than full-time hours for more than 6 years. And because the basketball president who wore jersey number 23 in high school became the president in 09. The Wannsee Conference in 42 was held exactly 990 months and 23 days before the beginning of the 9th of Av in the Hebrew calendar, which begins its sunset on August 12th. And by the way, 990 is the 44th triangular number, and God pairs 9, 44, and 23 together, because the 44th president became the president in 09 and wore jersey number 23. The 9th of Av is the date on which all of the major calamities of the Jews over the centuries symbolically began. And I mean all of the major calamities, all of them symbolically began on this 9th of Av date. I could list them all, but that would be another video. Including the dates that the Gross Action Warsaw began and the date when Jews were first put into train cars for the death camps. Okay? So these two things, Gross Action Warsaw is when they started rounding up the Jews and putting them into the ghettos. And the commandant wrote a memo giving the instructions to begin this. And that memo was dated on the 9th of Av. And so also the date that they first started rounding up the Jews and then putting them onto the death trains to the death camps was also on the 9th of Av. Okay, I mentioned those two examples because of what we were talking about in this video. The signs on July 11th, 2024 that pointed to Obama the Antichrist and pointed to the movie that takes place in a hotel in Colorado are 38 days before it is predicted that Obama will be appointed by Michelle Obama as her vice president on August 18th, 2024. Colorado is the 38th state to join the Union. Not only that, the only president to never have been elected vice president or president was Gerald Ford when he was appointed as the vice president. Just like Barack Obama will also be a president who will be unelected vice president or president. This is how he will overcome the 22nd Amendment's restriction on someone being elected more than twice. He will be appointed instead, just like the 38th president. And that's also why this 38 days, which is, again, why this movie takes place in Colorado. And furthermore, the hotel that King visited, the Stanley Hotel, is in Colorado. And Colorado is the 38th state. It is also the highest state. Denver is the highest major city in America, and that's why Obama had his national convention speech acceptance in 2008 there. And the name Bama in Hebrew means high place. Okay. The signs on July 11, 2024 that pointed to Obama the Antichrist and pointed to the movie that takes place in a hotel in Colorado. Oh, I just said that. Okay. The signs on July 11, 2024 point to room 237, and the original room number was 217. Jimmy Carter is predicted to die on the date 23/7, which is why the room number 237, exactly 2 times 17 weeks after he spoke at the prophetic funeral of his wife on November 28th, 2023. Okay, I won't get into that prophetic sign because, we want to stay focused on this video. The signs on July 11th, 2024 that pointed to Obama, whose name equals 84, and pointed to Carter's predicted death 2 times 2 times 3 days later on July 23rd, 2024. And 2 times 2 times 3 equals the 48th prime number and the 48th president. 2 times 2 times 3 days is also 3 times 4 days, which hints at 34, which equals 2 times 17, which equals room 217 in the movie, or the original room number, which equals the date 217, the date that the flood destruction began. Carter brokered the Camp David Accords that pressured Israel to return land. July 23rd, 2024 will be 262 days after student protesters stormed and vandalized the iron perimeter fence of the White House compound on November 4th, 2023, which was exactly 44 years after student protesters stormed the Iron Gate fence of the U.S. Embassy compound in Iran at the beginning of the 444-day hostage crisis, also known as the Iranian hostage crisis. 262 is the 84th semi-prime number. Again, this date that Carter's predicted to die, what's Carter also known for? The hostage crisis. His death is predicted to be 262 days, which is the 84th semi-prime number, which hints at Obama. And Carter is a parallel with Obama. And this was 262 days. His death will be 262 days after the protesters stormed and vandalized the iron perimeter fence of the White House compound, which was exactly 44 years, which hints at the 44th president, after student protesters stormed the Iron Gate fence perimeter of the U.S. Embassy compound in Iran, which began the 444-day hostage crisis. Okay, which of course hints at the 44th president, because there will be a lockdown. There will be FEMA camps. There will be that's what the compound being locked in the compound, the hostages hints at in all of this. Okay. James Earl Carter was born in 1924, and is predicted to die in 2024. 24 times 240 minutes, which is 4 days, after the predicted death of James Earl Jones, who is also King symbolism, okay, because James Earl Jones is predicted to die on July 19th. Okay, so we got the two King symbolism signs, 24 times 24 minutes apart, because Carter was born in 24 and will die in 24, and also the King of Kings, Jesus, the name Jesus in the Greek concordance is G2424. The iconic scene in which Jack Nicholson's character uses an axe to chop through a door to get at Wendy and Danny took 3 days and 60 doors to film. The scene is almost shot for shot the same as the scene in the classic silent film Phantom Carriage. Okay? So there's this classic silent film Phantom Carriage, and it has a scene of the guy chopping through the door, but it's almost the exact same scene shot for shot as Jack Nicholson's character in the movie The Shining when he's chopping through the door to get at Wendy and Danny, which took 3 days to film and 60 doors to film, which hints at 3 sixes. 666, the number of the Antichrist. And by the way, I just noticed that now, which is why I didn't write it in the first place. The Phantom Carriage is notable. This is from Wikipedia. The Phantom Carriage is notable for its special effects, its innovative narrative structure with flashbacks within flashbacks, and for having been a major influence on the works of Ingmar Bergman. It has been characterized as belonging to several genres. It has been called a morality tale, a melodrama, a fantasy film, a horror film. It is sometimes considered one of the first horror films due to its atmosphere and its impact on later entries in the genre. The film is generally considered to be one of the central works in the history of Swedish cinema. The plot, in other words, what I'm saying is that this movie is consequential in movie history. It's an important movie. If you are not familiar, it is a very famous movie, okay? The plot of Phantom Carriage, it's not obscure, and God would use a famous movie more than an obscure movie for his signs. The plot of Phantom Carriage is about the consequences of sin in the afterlife. Part of the plot of The Shining is the afterlife and reincarnation. Which isn't true, of course, but that's the theme here. The final scene of The Shining is of a picture on the wall in the hotel taken on July 4th, 1921. This is another referenced thing from the movie. This final scene of The Shining is of a picture on the wall of the hotel ballroom and it's supposedly taken on July 4th, 1921. In it, Nicholson's character, well, it's Jack Nicholson, and we are led to postulate whether or not it's in fact Jack Nicholson's character in the movie. Okay, so anyway, though, it's Jack Nicholson at the front of a large group of people gathered in the ballroom with Nicholson in a pose resembling a Baphomet. It's clear. He's in a pose resembling a Baphomet in front of a large group of people. This is amazing. This is symbolism for the Antichrist, staring at us from the picture into the present moment. It's quite eerie in the movie. In terms of prophecy, this image points to the gathering of Nazis at the Wannsee Conference. That's what this is all about. It's amazing. What I'm saying is that this movie is from God, and this final scene is from God. It's communicating the gathering, because the final scene is the gathering in the photo on the wall of the hotel, and it's all about the hotel. What God is communicating is a historic, because the photo is from the past, it's a historic moment. God is communicating that through the hotel of the historic past, when there was a gathering at a hotel conference center near Berlin, the Wannsee Conference, which was about the final solution for the Jews, the slaughter. The murderous intent of Nicholson's character, as he chops through the door to pursue Wendy and Danny, alludes to the murderous intent of the Nazis, and also the coming Antichrist and his followers. July 4th, 1921, the iconic date in the movie for a picture at the hotel, is 5,930 days before President Roosevelt dedicated the Timberline Lodge Hotel. Okay, the hotel is in Oregon, but President Roosevelt, and this is, travel wasn't as easy as it is today. President Roosevelt dedicated the Timberline Lodge Hotel in person. Okay, that's amazing. Now we're talking here. Because, earlier I mentioned there was the prophetic fire and all that. This is the hotel that's the exterior scenes for the movie. And we now have a president tied to this, okay? And not only that, Roosevelt is a president God is using in his signs because of this. Roosevelt, the 32nd president, which hints at 4 times 8, and the 48th president, future predicted 48th president, was the only president to serve more than 2 terms. Likewise, Obama, and Obama's name in simple English gematria equals 32, as in the 32nd president, will also serve more than 2 terms as the 48th president. 32 is 4 times 8. 48 minus 32 equals 4 times 4, which hints at the 44th president. That identifies the 44th president. Think about that. The 32nd president all along was identifying the 44th president as the 48th president, who will also serve more than 2 terms as the Antichrist. God designed that. 5,930 is the 36 plus 36 plus 36th prime number. God frequently repeats a number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning, and the number 36 is symbolic of 666, the number of the Antichrist, because it hints at 3 sixes, but also it is 6 times 6 and also 2 times 18, which is 6 plus 6 plus 6, and also the 36th triangular number, which in a triangle of numbers of 36 rows, the last number is 666, and 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 all the way up to 36 equals 666. The movie Phantom Carriage was released on January 1st, 1921. 4 plus 4 times 23 days, a pairing of 44 and 23 that confirms the signs and connections, before the iconic photo in The Shining that is dated in the same year of July 4th, 1921. Okay? So, in other words, the movie was released, it was released in the same year. So we have the movie The Phantom Carriage, which has in it a shot-for-shot, pretty much same scene as Jack Nicholson, who's chopping down the door in The Shining, the iconic scene. The date in the movie, The Shining, gives us 1921 because of the last iconic scene of the photo on the wall that was taken supposedly in 1921. And then this movie, Phantom Carriage, was released in 1921. That's amazing. But not only that, I think we also have a direct connection too, because the movie was released on January 1st, and that is 8 times 23 days, which is 4 plus 4 times 23 days, which gives us the 44 and 23, which confirms the signs and connections, as I explained. Okay? It's that many days before the July 4th, 1921. The iconic scene that ends the movie, The Shining, is a picture that is dated July 4th, 1921. July 4th, 1921 was exactly 145 years after July 4th, 1776. The birth of the nation, the symbolic beginning of America. 145 is the 49th semi-prime number, a number only divisible by 2 other prime numbers. 49 is 7 times 7, which is why Shelley Duvall, who starred in The Shining, which was a book written in 77, was born on the date 7/7 in 49. H188 equals whoa exclamation mark in Strong's Hebrew Concordance. And the date 7/7 is the 188th day of the calendar year. This word is used in the context in the Bible of extreme judgment from God. This makes Duvall's death a judgment warning for America. The reason is because of this connection from the date in the movie to the date that symbolizes America. The date in the movie connects with 145 to the symbolic date for America. And 145 gives us Shelley Duvall because it's the 49th semi-prime number. 49 is 7/7. Okay, 49 is equal to 7 times 7. And Duvall was born on the date 7/7 in 49. Furthermore, her birth date, 7/7, is the 188th day of the calendar year. So her birth, symbolically, was a woe, judgment warning for America, which would come when she died. And I'm explaining how that is the case. This makes Duvall's death a judgment warning for America. The Antichrist will rise to power as a result of the death of the 49th Vice President on a flight that will mirror the flight path of Flight 77 on September 11th, which was a flight from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles. A major theme in The Shining is mirrors. Okay? Harris's plane flight path will mirror that of Flight 77 on 9/11, the big judgment warning, 9/11 from God. A major theme in The Shining is mirrors. Duvall, who was born on 7/7, which is in itself a mirror, in 49, which is 7 times 7, which is also another mirror, died on July 11th, 11 days before the predicted death of the 49th Vice President on a flight that will mirror Flight 77. This will be 1 day before the predicted death of the president who was inaugurated in 77. Now, actually, this analysis is 100% correct. However, this video is being made on July 17th. It is prior to July 22nd, the date it was predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. And I am not saying that I've changed my mind. What I am saying is this is how God's signs works. There is zero doubt that God is pointing to July 22nd as the date or as a date for Kamala Harris, but it is now known that it is a step in the trail of signs that is leading to her death on July 27th. There are good reasons for why God used this date, 722, as a step. One being is that 227 is the 49th prime number. But anyway, that's explained in other videos. The thing too, though, is that this analysis is still on in the same sense, in that she is predicted to die one day before the funeral of Jimmy Carter. It was predicted that she would die one day before his death, but now it's predicted that she will die on the 27th, one day before Carter's predicted funeral on the 28th. Okay. In advance of July 11th, 2024, God pointed to this date for Jimmy Carter. Carter is symbolism for the 7th and 8th kings in Revelation. The sign on July 11th, 2024, was The Shining and Room 237. 237 is the 78th semi-prime number, which hints at the 7th and 8th kings. And if you've watched the other Carter videos, your jaw should be dropped, because it is all about, or Carter is symbolic of this 7th and 8th kings, which is why the prophetic funeral, the 7th king, Trump, will be sitting next to the 6th king, who is the 8th king. Because in the prophecy, the 8th king is said to be, was, is not, and will be. And at the moment of the funeral, he will be Obama and is not, but will be the 8th king. And this series of chronological kings, symbolic kings, begins with Carter, who was inaugurated in 77, which is what begins the 7 kings parallel. Well, anyway, this date that was known ahead of time for Jimmy Carter was about The Shining, and one of the most referenced things in cinema is Room 237. And 237 is the 78th semi-prime number, which gives us the 7th and 8th kings. And furthermore, again, The Shining was written by Stephen King, who wrote The Shining in 77. Shelley Duvall died at 75 on the day of the 75th NATO summit. Duvall and NATO were born in 49. 4 divided by 9 equals 0.444. And again, at this prophetic NATO summit 75 years later, the gaffe was of the leader, the first Jewish leader. Again, so coming back to full circle here, now we know why the significance of the gaffe involving the first Jewish leader. Because as I just explained, all of this is pointing to the Nazis and the final solution of the Jews. Okay, so now the gaffe, Zelensky, at the time of the invasion, the prophetic beginning, and that's the big date for God's signs, is the beginning date, February 24th, 2022. At that time, Zelensky had just turned 44, so he was essentially 44 for the entire first year of the war. And also, at that time, before the Exodus evacuation, which is also symbolic for reasons, the nation that he led, the 44-year-old, was made up of 44 million people, because God is using Zelensky and his signs for symbolism for the Antichrist, the 44th president. All right. And as I explained earlier, God pointed to the 44th president through the gaffes at the NATO summit. Now, let's begin again. Shelley Duvall died at 75 on the day of the 75th NATO summit. Duvall and NATO were born in 49. 4 divided by 9 equals 0.444. NATO was born on 4/4, the date 4/4, on the 94th day of the year. Again, in 94, hints at 4 divided by 9 equals 0.444, the 44th president. Who will lead? Well, I'm getting to that actually. So Duval was born 94 days after this. Okay, so NATO was born on the 94th day of the year, and then Duval was born 94 days after this, on the 188th day of the year, which again, as I explained earlier, hints at woe, exclamation mark. Woe for the Antichrist, who will lead the organization of NATO, but more than NATO, as I'm getting at. The 44th president will return to the White House after the death of the 49th vice president and will lead NATO, okay? Which is why NATO was born in 49 and so was Duval and all what I just explained, because the way in which the Antichrist will become the president again is through the death of the 49th vice president. And then he will lead NATO. NATO, currently, because of the war, which is prophetic, because it wasn't the case before, and now it is prophetic, has 32 member states. The name Obama is equal to 32 in simple English gematria, which, by the way, again, is 4 times 8, and he will be the 48th president who will serve more than 2 terms, just like the 32nd president. NATO, which is why NATO has 32 members, because it's prophetic now. NATO was because of the war, which involves the first Jewish leader and the 44 and 44 Zelensky, etc. NATO was formed after World War II with the Nazis. God pointed to the Nazis with the Wannsee Conference on the day of the 75th NATO summit. In pointing to the Nazis, God also pointed to the 32nd president, who fought the Nazis, who dedicated the Timberline Lodge, which is why The Shining comes into this on this date of this 75th NATO summit that points to the Nazis. The 32nd president issued the Atlantic Charter Statement, which was the basis for NATO, which now has 32 states, which hints at the 32nd president, and Obama, whose name equals 32. The signs on July 11th, 2024, that pointed to the Nazis, the 32-member NATO, and the 32nd president, were exactly 32 weeks after the signs on December 2nd, 2023, that involved the first Nazi concentration camp, Dachau, and also the evacuation of Okinawa, which hints at Obama, because the bombs were flown from Okinawa, which is an island that the U.S. won in World War II, and currently has 32 military bases on it. So there was the evacuation because of the tsunami on the coast of Okinawa, and it has 32 military bases, U.S. bases, which makes this a U.S. sign, of course. And we have a 32 weeks connection exactly to this NATO summit, which has 32 members, and NATO began with the 32nd president. And by the way, these signs on December 2nd, 2023, these were expected in advance. And this was the signs expected in advance of this date were exactly what we got, because we were expecting evacuation signs. We were expecting bomb signs, because this is part of the trail that's leading to the dirty bombs that will explode in Manhattan, which is predicted to be on July 25th, 2 days after the death of Carter and 2 days before the predicted death of Harris. Well, anyway, we had the Dachau Nazi signs, and this is all explained in the Okinawa Obama prophecy video. Make sure you watch all of the videos. I'm not going to remake that video because it's part of a trail of signs that led to February 23rd. And that's enough, and the other videos, and some of the videos explain what happened from the trail of signs from the 23rd. But this is how it works. This is how I knew ahead of time to expect these signs on December 2nd, is because it's a trail of signs. By the way, December 2nd, is just incidentally, hints at 212 in the area code of Manhattan, is 212. And we were expecting signs of evacuation and bomb symbolism, which is exactly what we got. Anyway, you get the idea. So make sure you watch that video. It's amazing. I can't tell you, all of God's signs is amazing. So what can I tell you? Watch all the videos. But also, the bigger reason for doing so is because there's extremely important information that needs to be learned that God was communicating through the development of these trails of signs and these stories that God is telling. These are stories. God is telling a story here with this sign of Shelley Duvall's death and The Shining, etc. It's an extremely interesting story, but it's also communicating extremely important knowledge. For example, we pointed to the killing fields, and who began his reign at the NIAID the same day that the Killing Fields was released. It just goes on and on, right? The slaughter here we're talking about. This is stuff that God is communicating that can't be communicated in any other way other than to develop these trails of signs. So, to the skeptic, the trails of signs are what it is all about. The information, the analysis is not wrong. I'm not a prophet. God is not speaking through me. He's speaking through his prophetic signs that God commanded us to watch. It's way more than simply God tapping someone and saying, hey, this is going to happen on such and such date. Tell the world. What would be the point of that? There wouldn't be much point. This is far more important than anything like that. Okay. Now, so this 32 weeks is also 223 days, and 223 is the 48th prime number, which hints at the 48th president, the future predicted president and Antichrist, who will lead NATO. The last scene of The Shining is a photo dated July 4th, 1921, which is exactly 27 years and 9 months before the birth of NATO on 4/4 in 1949. Which hints at Daniel 9:27, the last verse of the prophecy in Daniel chapter 9, and which regards the period of the Antichrist. This is the verse in this prophecy, if you will. It's this period of the end times and the period of the Antichrist, Daniel 9:27, which is why this movie, The Shining, which is pointing to the slaughter in the hotel, etc., and pointing to the Wannsee Conference, as I explained, this date in the movie is exactly 27 years and 9 months, which hints at Daniel 9:27 before the birth of NATO. In other words, it is clear that NATO and whatever is going to come from NATO is all about leading the path to the Antichrist, which is why, again, NATO's involvement in this stupid, inane war, wicked lie from the left, this war from the political cult of the left, this stupid war that NATO is involved in. And it's because, and it's all, and again, it all points to the 44-year-old leader of the 44 million, which points to the 44th president who will lead NATO as the Antichrist. Okay. So, which hints at, okay, so in other words, the last scene of The Shining points to the last verse of Daniel 9 regarding the Antichrist. Yep. And again, that image is of Jack Nicholson in the pose of a Baphomet in front of a large gathering of people. He's like, it is in itself the image symbolic of the Antichrist. But now we have the 27 years and 9 months connection too. Okay, so this 27, and again, Shelley Duvall died on the day of the NATO summit, so that's, that's why it's all connected. So this 27 years and 9 months period is also 2,777% of a year. It's almost exactly, by the way. It's 2,776.99%. And 2,777 is the 2,777 is the 404th prime number, which hints at the 44th president. There is a scene in The Shining in which Nicholson's character says to the bartender, quote, "white man's burden," unquote. This is further confirmation that the hotel in the movie points to the Wannsee Conference as the Nazis pursued racial supremacy. On July 11th, 2024, the Dow Jones gained 32 points, which confirms the 32 weeks connection from the 32 military bases on Okinawa and also the Dachau concentration camp. The first symbolic one, by the way. The reason why God pointed to this one is it was not only the first one, but they also trained the Nazi officers at that camp before sending them to the other camps. It, in other words, is the symbolic Nazi concentration camp just outside of Berlin. Now, how God pointed to that is explained in the other video I was telling you about, the Obama Okinawa video, which is amazing. So we have a confirmation, though, here, too, because the Dow gained 32 points on this day, which was 32 weeks after the 32 military bases on Okinawa, which is at Obama, whose name Obama equals 32 in simple English gematria. Okay, so, and also the 32-member NATO state, NATO, and the 32nd president, right? January 11th, 2024, on this day, the S&P 500, and G500 is the word in the Greek concordance that means Antichrist, lost 49 points, which confirms the NATO and Duval signs because they were born in 49. Okay, that's amazing. The signs on July 11th, 2024 pointed to NATO and room 237. 237 is the 78th semi-prime number. The signs also pointed to Jimmy Carter, who is symbolism for the prophecy about the 7th and 8th kings. The 8th king in the prophecy is a revived Western Roman Empire, with Rome as its political seat of power. It seems that these signs on July 11th involving NATO confirm this. So what I'm getting at here, and what I was alluding to earlier by saying things like a future form of NATO, is that, first of all, the 7th and 8th kings are not Trump and Obama. That's the secondary level fulfillment of this. God can use multiple levels of fulfillment. The primary fulfillment of this prophecy is in fact Pope Francis, the 7th king, and the 8th king being a revived Roman Empire, which is why it says this 8th king is a beast and is a system, not a person, as it says in that same prophecy, and that it was, is not, and will be again. Rome had temporal powers over Western Europe. It was stripped of this by Napoleon, but in the final days, the Western nations will come together in a political form like NATO, which is essentially what NATO is, right? And the political seat of power will once again be in Rome. The Vatican will once again have temporal powers. Okay, it's very clear, all the signs, but this is just one of them. And that's why we have this NATO here in these signs, okay? Just to be clear. It's not only about Obama, but its a secondary fulfillment is Obama because of the 7 kings from Carter. But the primary fulfillment, what is really being talked about in Revelation 17, is what I just described. Francis and a revived Roman Empire. Okay? July 11th, 2024 was the 5th of Tammuz in the Hebrew calendar. It was on the 5th of Tammuz that Ezekiel had his vision of the wheel within a wheel in the sky. H2840 is the word for nave or hub of a wheel that holds the wheel's spikes together, spokes. 2,840 days, because H 2,840 is this word, okay? 2,840 days before July 11th, 2024, on the 5th of Tammuz, was the day that a giant cloud formation of a wheel within a wheel appeared in conjunction with the sounding of a divine trumpet in the sky over Jerusalem. Thank you to Steve Fletcher for this connection. Okay, so July 11th was the 5th of Tammuz, and this was the day in the prophecy in Ezekiel that the vision of the wheel within a wheel was seen by Ezekiel in the sky. And then in the sky, 2,840 days earlier, and that hints at this word, it means the wheel, the part of the wheel that holds the spokes together, in other words, a wheel within a wheel, was the day of a giant cloud formation of a wheel within a wheel that appeared in conjunction with the sounding of a divine trumpet in the sky over Jerusalem. This was the day after Obama and other world leaders attended the prophetic funeral of Shimon Peres, which was the day of a black moon. The name Peres, which is meaning 2 new moons in 1 month. And I remember this, by the way, because I was in Jerusalem on that day, and I was on a bus from Tel Aviv back to Jerusalem, because I went to Tel Aviv for the day to hand out flyers warning people of the imminent arrival of Christ. And as I was in the bus pulled over to the side of the highway as the motorcade led the limousine SUV type vehicles up the highway at high speed, in which I believe Obama was in. So I'll always remember that. But so the name of Peres means to divide. The world led by Obama will divide or seek to divide Israel and make Jerusalem an international city. Peres had been in politics for 70 years, which is prophetic in the Bible regarding Jerusalem and the restoration of Jerusalem. In the Bible, there are listed 70 nations of the world. It was reported 70 world leaders attended Peres's funeral. That was literally a headline. 70 world leaders attended Peres's funeral. He had been in politics for 70 years. 70 years is prophetic regarding the restoration of Israel, and it is 70 nations that in this process of restoring Israel will seek to, I should say, God's process of restoring Israel will seek to divide the nations will seek to divide Israel, and the nations are symbolized by 70 of them in the Bible. Absolutely amazing. Now, 110 days after Peres's death, leaders of 70 nations, again, this was a headline, it was literally 70 nations, leaders of the 70 nations gathered to condemn Israel and discuss how to divide Israel, without Israel and Israel condemning the talks. Poking God in the eye, in other words. God even says so literally in prophecy, that Jerusalem is the apple of his eye. Obama attended the funeral of Peres exactly 1,290 days. And this comes from a prophecy in Daniel chapter 12 about an abomination, as in abomination, okay, after he was in Jerusalem and Bethlehem. So he was in Jerusalem 1,290 days apart. This number of days hints at Obama himself, and it's an abomination. And the Antichrist is said to set up an abomination on the Temple Mount in the last days. Okay, and his visit to Bethlehem, which was an abomination itself, because he is the Antichrist, he visited the birth of Christ in Bethlehem, which in turn was 1,260 days, a period of time mentioned 7 times in the Bible prophecy regarding the period of the Antichrist, after he won the Nobel Peace Prize, which is the exact opposite of what he will be doing. He will be claiming. He will claim to be coming in the name of peace, but he is the Antichrist, the deceiver. And he is coming to divide Israel, making war on God. And so he got this Nobel Peace Prize for doing nothing, and this exactly 1,260 days apart from when he was in Israel. Okay, and this was the same day, this Peace Prize announcement was the same day that NASA bombed, as in Obama, the moon twice, which hinted at the second presidency for Obama. NASA slammed satellites or contraptions into the moon to study the moon dust, etc. Okay, 2 of them right in a row. It was this, and by the way, I believe there will also be 2 dirty bombs in Manhattan, just like 2 towers collapsed on 9/11. It's the second presidency of Obama, and it also hints at the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ, because the moon symbolizes Christ. The moon is a giant rock, and rock in the Bible is symbolic of Christ. And watching for the timing of the moon is important in the Bible, as it symbolizes watching for the timing of the return of Christ, which includes watching for moon signs. These connections connect, and by the way, there's no point to watching for the Lord's signs and the timing of his return if the timing isn't knowable. The most quoted verse in the Bible that's taken out of context and is a mistranslation. The day is knowable, and of course there are many passages in the Bible that flatly contradict that, including the 1,290 days in Daniel chapter 12. God is saying clearly right there that the final day is knowable because it'll be 1,290 days after another date, obviously. And also Revelation chapter 3:3 says, Jesus said, "Therefore watch. If you don't watch, I will come at an hour in which you won't expect. Therefore, if we are watching, we will know the hour," not even just the day. But you could also say that that hour is metaphorical. I don't know the exact hour, but I do know it will be October 12th, 2024, the second coming. And by the way, the purpose of this prediction that is from God is to prove this, and I know far better than you the reason and purpose for this prediction. It is to prove what I have just said. These connections connect to the Nazis and the Holocaust through the sign on July 11th, 2024. Bible prophecy speaks of persecution of Jews in Judea by the Antichrist. Okay? The Jews will also flee Judea into the wilderness, and that's why Obama, after he was in Bethlehem, the day after he was in Petra, Jordan, which is believed to be the place where the Jews will be hiding in the wilderness. If it isn't, it's symbolic of it, but I'm pretty sure that that's what will happen. And so I've explained now what happened on the signs that occurred on July 11th. Now that this explanation is known, you can get back to the other Jimmy Carter videos. Make sure you share this video with everyone and don't ever stop sharing it. Literally, it's a bag of gold. And Jesus warned Christians that the Christian that didn't do anything with his bag of gold was banished to hell. So beware. Also Ezekiel 3:33. The blood of the person that sinned is on the hands of the watchman if the watchman doesn't warn that person. So it is our obligation. This is a massive bag of gold. There's nothing like it. I need to say that with extreme emphasis. There's absolutely nothing comparable to this prediction in this video. Don't ever stop sharing. Work hard, work hours every day to share it. Put it in social media, on posts, on videos, channels you don't watch, channels that have nothing to do with what you're interested in, etc. Just keep posting how this was predicted in advance, all right? Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon, Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, TrumpPrediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the BitChute.com or the Odyssey.com channel. And do it now in case you aren't able to later.